companies love exposure, don't they? I remember watching a video. It was Flea, bass player from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, who'd been interviewed by River Phoenix. Again, this would have been like one of those Hot Licks Techniques videos, like VHS probably, not even a DVD, from back in the 90s. And they talk about kit, they talk about equipment. And River Phoenix says to Flea, "Tell me about the bass you're using." And he goes, "Oh, well, this is a Music Man Stingray. That was the instrument of choice back then." And he said, it's really ironic. He said, "What's that?" He goes, "Well," he said, "when I was a kid, I'd dream about playing a bass guitar like this. It's such a beautiful instrument, so wonderfully crafted and designed and crafted." And yeah. And he said, "And the irony is now I'm big, rich pop star with loads of money to buy these instruments. They give them to me for free." There's, I get a little bit tongue in cheek. I don't mean to mock people. I really don't. I'm so sorry if I do. I'm terrible. I've got a very bad sense of humour. I was born with it. Blame my mum. It's funny how when bigger gigs and bigger things on your profile appear, all of a sudden people come out of the woodwork and they want to offer you stuff. Hear me out before I say it. I've had a wonderful relationship with overwater bass guitar since back in about 2002. I did some work with, it was either a Pat Metheny big band or Tolas Zavazeleris, who is like a Greek Pat Metheny. I can't remember which gig it was, I do apologise. But I remember I had to have a fretless bass guitar for it. And I was sniffing around, and there was this big-nosed git that lived in Belsize Park called Mo Foster. Aforementioned Moby. And Mo, he was like, "Oh, talk to Chris May. He's your man, Overwater." And I did my research and I found a fretless Progress bass. It's Progress 3, and it was in Machine Head, which was a little music shop in Hitchin that's no longer there anymore in Stevenage. And I turned up at this music shop, walked in, and then there was this, looked like a spaceship on the wall. It's an incredible piece of Spanish olive on a walnut body. It was a beautiful, beautiful bass. I picked it up, played it. It was like putting on an old sweater. Everything was just perfect. The sound, the posture, the feel of it, the neck profile. I was like, wow, this is the bass for me. It was about 2002, I think. That was when I got my first Overwater. And then over the next few years, I've been using Spectre basses for probably the first 15 years of my career. I had a great relationship with Stuart Spectre over at the Woodstock plant in America. So much so that on my 30th birthday, he actually made me a bass and wrote to Phil Mann, "Happy birthday," on the back of the headstock. I sold that bass, so somebody out there owns that bass. I'd like to know where it is, just to find out why you bought a bass with my name on it. But there was that crossover period of using Spectres, and then I started getting introduced to Overwater. I loved the fretless so much that I then went to the company and said, "Would you mind making me a fretted version of it?" That's how I just started getting this relationship. I started using Overwater from about 2002. So we're talking 23 years now that they've been my first call instrument. I've owned so many Overwaters, it's ridiculous. Probably 24 basses, including all of Mo Foster. When Mo passed, I inherited all of his Overwaters. So I'm like an Overwater museum in my house. But I always used Progresses. And then I went into the West End. I did my very first ever gig in the West End, April 26, 2002. I remember that because my mum bought the ticket and she framed it. It was the first time I went into the West End. And it was doing the Motown show, Dancing in the Street. It was great. What a great show. And I turned up with this Progress. It's a very modern looking bass. And obviously James Jameson's had a Fender. Job done. And I turned up and the MD went, "Are you going to play that or land it?" Oh, crikey. So all of a sudden I learned that, people listen with their eyes. So I went back to Overwater and said, "Would you mind making me a Progress, but make it look like a traditional Fender?" So put a jazz bass shell on it. And I said, yeah, we can do that. So I took all the specs that I had, like through body, 24 frets, and all this, all the gubbins, everything about it was a Progress. It was just a different shape. And that bass was affectionately known as Foghorn. All my basses are Looney Tunes characters. There is a reason, there's a method behind the madness. And that's this bass that's sitting here with me right now. I commissioned for this bass to be built. Although it became a signature model later in my career, I paid for this to be built. The reason it's called Foghorn is if you look at the wood grain, just here, there's a chicken. There's 2 eyes and a beak and 2 nostrils, and you can zoom in. If you look on the front cover on my books, that's it. So Foghorn Leghorn became this bass, and then that was my main jazz, and I used that on everything, and all the gigs, all the stuff with Peter Dollinger, all the studio stuff. They're phenomenal basses, and all the guys, anybody that really counted at the time, I was like checking out Steve Price, he was at Lion King in the West End, Phil Mulford very famously, Ian King, wonderful bass player. I got so much respect for Ian. They all used Overwaters, so I was like, okay, I'm going to stick with this company, and developed a great relationship. The luthier that builds these basses, a guy called Martin Lee, one of my dearest and closest friends. And then as the career started to gather a bit more momentum, the books started coming out, doing well. A few gigs started coming in, and I was at the institute. There was a pivotal thing, which was, crikey, this is not questions to be asked, but I'm really tired. 2011, Bass Day UK. I was working for the Institute in London, Music College, as part of their bass faculty. Infamous, maybe revered, I'm not sure. But as a result, when they did all these big exhibitions, I was always involved and I was always out there. And Bass Day UK was happening in Manchester. It was a big event because the headline act was Marcus Miller. And I did a live set. So I kind of opened for Marcus. I do all this tapping and standalone stuff on the bass, like a one-man band, sometimes out of time, but one-man band. You can hear Mo just getting that in. And the auditorium was just full of my students. I had so many students because from the university and through private stuff, and this chap came up to me and tapped me on the back and said, "Hello, mate. Are you Philip Mann?" And I went, "Yeah. Who are you?" And he went, "Oh, my name's Scott Devine." I went, "All right." I don't know if I was a bit cocky, but it meant nothing to me. I was like, and he went, "Oh, I'm setting up this online bass tuition thing called Scott's Bass Lessons, which is now one of the biggest platforms on the planet. They're huge." He said, "Well, do you want to be involved?" And because I'm going around talking to people and finding out what they want from an academic channel. And every time I asked them who teaches them, they're all saying you. And I said, "Oh, okay." So I got involved with Scott. Now, Scott did his work experience as a kid at Overwater. So all of a sudden, one of my best friends was Martin. I got this wonderful relationship with Chris May, recommended to go there via Mo Foster. And Scott, from another direction, knew Chris because of work experience at the workshop in Carlisle. And then for that first number of years, there was an awful lot of content. I did about 14 courses. Each one had about 10 lessons in it, I think, at Scott's Bass Lessons. Huge amount of material. That's like about 140 hours of tuition, I think. So much so that I was working at the Institute and Scott was like, "Stop doing that. Come and work for me full time." I was gigging a lot and touring a lot, so it didn't really fit my timetable. A lot of respect for Scotty. But because he had that mass exposure, they huge amount of subscriptions. If you go on YouTube and any sort of social media platform and look up Scott's Bass Lessons, you'll see this following is massive. And all the biggest names in bass playing, you name them, everyone from Victor Wooten to Jeff Berlin, all these names we spoke about today, through to John Patitucci and all these guys, they've all done masterclasses at SBL. SBL's got a great budget now because they've got a lot of subscriptions, so they can get the guys in. And there's my little face everywhere, and it tied in perfectly with starting to write for Bass Guitar magazine. So all of a sudden, I was at the Institute in London teaching the next generation of bassists. I had a column in Bass Guitar magazine, Bass Player magazine in the US. They were like a same company. And then I was on Scott's Bass Lessons, this biggest platform probably in the world. Don't quote me on that, but I think they are. I think it is one of the biggest, not just bass platforms, maybe music education platforms. They are huge, absolutely massive. So my little cheeky face started appearing all around the globe. And then I remember doing, in about 2016, it must have been, I was doing a masterclass at the London Bass Show. And Chris and Kirsty, his partner, came up to me and said, "Phil, we need to talk." And I said, "Do you want to take your jazz bass and make it a signature model? And it suits us because you're getting a lot of exposure. And I want to look after my friends. If we can make your business do better, let's do that." I've always been about looking after British companies. If I can help promote my amplifications, Ashdown, that's the Good A family from right back when I was at college. My strings now, Elite Strings, that's Barry Morehouse, once again, from back in my college days when I was a kid. And then Chris with the bass, like, yeah, if I can promote this stuff on the internet and help your companies, I will. You know, I'm not going to just sell out to whoever I can. Let's look after family first and all that. So I said, wow, this is amazing, let's do it. And I didn't think it would, who gives a shit about me, you know what I mean? And all of a sudden, there's this Phil Mann jazz basses being sent out all over the world. I've got students everywhere. I've got a student coming to a Drifters show this week from Texas who's got a Phil Mann bass, all the books and the preamp as well. Gets lessons from me. He's coming all over to see the show. It's incredible. But yeah, my bass has got a lot of, it looks like a jazz bass, but it's not. It's a wolf in sheep's clothing. It's got a lot of specific features about it, which, although it looks like a kind of a standard Leo Fender design, it's not. There's a lot going on here with the actual construction, which makes it respond much more like a progress bass. It's loaded with Bartolini pickups, Trickfish preamps, and it's a great bass, my main bass. I've been all around the world with me, this one. It's a bit like Trigger's Broom, I'm afraid, because it's had different bodies. When I first got it, it was too heavy, so I had to make a new body. It's had different pickups, different preamps, different tuners. I broke the tuners because there was one time it came out of an airport lounge and a bit of it was on the other side of the airport. I was like, it needs to be repaired. So I'm not sure how much of it's the original bass that I had commissioned. But yeah, in 2017, they made this an official signature model. So if you go on the Overwater website, you can buy a Philip Mann signature model, which is phenomenal. And it came out in the magazine. There was like there was an advert, a whole page advert in the magazine. It said, "Judge the man by the company he keeps." And it had like my credits and a photograph of me looking all serious with my bass guitar. But it's done well, it's done fantastic. Other than Music Man, when I did the Albert Lee stuff, I had to use Music Man because he was endorsing Music Man. So I had a music, I've had Stingray 5s for most of my career, pre-Overwater, and then Overwaters throughout. Just recently, I've just bought a new Mayonnaise Polish company, which is beautiful bass. I just started playing around with that. I'm not going to lie, that's more for tax reasons than anything. I had to spend some money. My accountant said, "You're not spending any money, spend some money." Back to that Flea quote: as soon as you've got some money, they give it to you for free. So I got my Overwater. That's my main bass, goes all around the world. The Music Man, they're like my two workhorses. Ashdown bass amps in the studio. That's because I used, as a student, Trace Elliott. It's all owned by the Good A family. These days, live, I don't really use amplification. I use powered wedges and processors, in-ear technology. That's what led to my preamp, which we'll talk about in a second. But in the studio, I've got the LB30, which is a wonderful all-valve 30-watt head, which just sounds spectacular. As soon as you put a mic in front of it and cut some stuff, it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. So yeah, Ashdown in the studio, on stage, Music Man or my Overwater. I'd get some funny things on the comments on the internet, where sometimes people go, "Oh, I see you're using a Music Man. What happened to your Overwater?" I go, nothing's happened to my Overwater. Instruments are like tools. I'm not going to take a hammer to put a screw in a bit of wood, you know. So it's about using, this is a jazz bass, but if I don't need to use a jazz bass, I need to use a precision, I'm going to use a precision. If I'm using a Music Man, I'll use a Music Man. So yeah, this is, you know, my signature jazz. So yeah, that's foghorn. Then the Music Man in the studio, Ashdown. But because of that footprint, things changed a lot, an awful lot. And I started using preamps. My early sound through in-ear monitoring was atrocious. I hated it. Always sounded really thin and modulated. Ugh, it was awful. I said, can I get a valve? Somehow get a valve on my pedal board just to warm it all up and make it sound fluffy. Valves take an awful lot of MA, you know, currency, like electricity. And as a result, it's very difficult to get a 9-volt powered valve for it to really do what it's supposed to do. But I did a lot of research and I found this wonderful engineer, a guy called Nathan Slade, who works out of Chicago. He does Sushi Box effects. And you design it, you know, you put it to him, he'll design and build it. Simple as that. And he had a DI box which had a valve in it. And he uses internal voltage boosters so it can fit on a normal pedal board. My gosh, get me that immediately. It had a few little things I wanted to tweak. The actual valve inside, I wanted it to be different. Also, a thing called a high pass filter I wanted to have on there. The high pass and low pass filters, if you have a frequency bandwidth for your recording, the really low end is a high pass and the really top end is a low pass. So they're opposite. But that's the stuff that makes things really boomy. So you can have a filter which, as you engage the filter, it cuts the boom. So if you're playing with double bass, or if you're in a room which has got a lot of reverb, or your amp is just a bit overpowering, you can put a high pass filter. So I said to Nathan, can we take your effect, your Sushi preamp, put a different valve in it? I wanted a cleaner valve. I didn't want it to distort as much. So a 12AU7 valve rather than a 12AUX, which is like the conventional overdrive valve. Cleaner valve, and then put a high frequency bypass on it. And once we do that, we put my name on it. And we did. And that's this guy. And this is with bass in mind is my company. I don't want to put my name above the door. So everything with me, my books are with bass in mind publications, and this is the with bass in mind edition of the Valve DI. It does nothing other than make you sound better. It's not an effects pedal. People expect to hear chorus or an octave or all these fancy reverbs. It's not. This just makes everything sound sexy. Simple as that. You put the bass in and what comes out the other end is just glorious. I don't think I've switched it off. It's called Finally because the idea is you put your pedal board, tuner, all your effects, and then put this at the end. That signal, it send one signal to your in-ears and one signal to the front of the house. But what comes out's valve. It's not solid state or microchip doing the job. It's analog. And then we put the high frequency bypass on it, that's why it's the version 3, so it's not the earlier renditions that Nathan did. And it's bloody brilliant. I love it. So yeah, somehow I've gone from being a runner to some bloke sitting here with his own book series, signature bass and signature pedal as well. So it's quite surreal from my perspective because I suffer terribly with imposter syndrome. Very, very bad. It's you are today what you are yesterday, which in my case is just tired. But next week I could be out of work and not have a gig. I've been employed. I've been in full-time bass playing since I was 17, so nearly 30 years now. So I must be doing something right. But it's funny how all of a sudden in the last, as I say, the publicity grew, so did the products. Massively grateful to Bass Guitar Magazine, Scott's Bass Lessons, the Players School of Music, the Institute, because it was them that collectively kind of got my name out there. And that's academic and promotional, not studio work or gigging. I had nothing to do with that. It was all really just about, that guy, Philip Mann, I suppose the tuition gave me the skills to do the gigs, but I'm getting it. It just did absolutely brilliant. So we've got a couple of things we're doing. This is a DI pedal. We're going to try and do a preamp to go with this. This is called Finally, the preamp we call Prelude. That will come out. I've just started my 7th book, so that will come out at some point as well. It takes me forever. It takes me about about 2 years to write a book, and then 2 more years to take out the spelling mistakes, and a further 2 years to get it right. But it's all coming together quite nicely. So yeah, that's the kit. Yeah, hopefully that helps out. So I think the same for most people is that the lockdown period when we was all exposed to the COVID virus, it affected so many people's lives. A lot of people that were performing musicians, we had to recreate ourselves, redefine ourselves, find a way of making a living and surviving like anybody did. I'd been a university lecturer for some period of time, and then I'd started doing a lot of work in front of the lens with Scott's bass lessons. And then we went into lockdown. I said, well, maybe it's time just for me to do this on my own, with bass in mind. We talked about with the logo that's on my pedal, and it's with bass in mind publications on my book. So that goes back way before Scott's bass lessons, when it was just my books that were in circulation. I then decided to make that into a full company. So everything, which is 9-volt recording studios, which is where I do all of my sessions, internet sessions and stuff like that, my tuition, then my books, my pedals, my basses, my CV. I did a thing called In Conversation With, where I did a great little interview with Mo, actually, if you ever get a chance to do that. And then all of my articles from Bass Player and Bass Guitar magazine, they're all underneath one big umbrella now, which is with bass in mind. I found I had some problems with teaching to a lens, and it was mostly based around accountability. I want to talk to my student. I want to have a relationship with my student. I want to know what they're good at, what they're bad at, and then give them guidance to make them be better musicians. I can't do that to a lens. A lens, I just look at a lens and say, hi guys, this is how to play this scale, and you play it, and you don't know who's receiving that information. So I looked at internet tuition and said, there's got to be a better way. And that's what basically led to With Bass in Mind, which is my own academic platform. Why I stopped working at the institute, it's why I stopped working at the Players School of Music, and ultimately why I stopped working for Scott's Bass Lessons, is because I set up my own little platform now. So yeah, if you're interested in my books, my basses, my preamp, loads of archived magazine articles, plus loads of interviews that I did my own series, which was In Conversation With. Season 2 is just about to come out now. And that's honestly Dave Swift, Mo Foster, Victor Wooten, Neil Fairclough. He's been holding down the Queen's bass band duties for John Deacon for the last few years. All of that stuff, that's all under With Bass in Mind, which is my little place now. Actually, funny enough, I mentioned there that when I do my online sessions, another little nickname that follows me around is 9-volt. And actually on the Albert Lee album, no, it's the Peter Donegan album, it says bass Phil 9-volt man. And then I said, I might as well adopt that as my studio name. So there's albums out there in circulation that it doesn't say my name on the sleeve, it just says 9-volt recording studios. But that is me. And I was at Decca Studios, and we was recording a live studio album for Peter Donegan. And we was playing through, my basses were active, and I was using a Music Man bass. Here's a flaw with Music Man basses: they don't have a bypass switch. So when the battery goes dead, it's dead. There's no signal. And during the recording, red lights on, studio audience, countless song, battery goes dead. Sorry, I'm an arse. Everyone knows I'm an idiot, but that's just confirmed it. Sorry. And I opened up my kit bag and I didn't have a spare. And the reason was that the night before, I serviced all my basses, put new batteries in, new strings, and then on the day of the session, I took a different tool. I went, oh, that's going to be the better bass, I'll take that. And that was the one that I didn't service. So when I opened up my kit bag, all the things that I needed weren't in there. I had no spare strings because I'd used them all, and I didn't have any spare batteries. I thought, oh, idiot. And all of a sudden I remembered that my tuner, which was on my pedal board, was being run off mains power, but it had a battery inside it. So I unscrewed the tuner, took the battery out, plugged it into my bass. Off we go. Count off the song, went back, red light on, started recording again. 2 minutes down the line, that battery went dead as well. What a prat. mean, talk about horrible lessons. So yeah, that's right. I coined the name 9-volt, and I've still got that 9-volt upstairs. I've with the album. I put the album cover and the battery in my sense of humour in a little frame. What an idiot! But yeah, there's a few albums out. There's a live albums that I'm credited on. Lorne Riley's done fantastic. He had 3 #1 hits in the country charts this year. He's done brilliant. That's me all on bass on that. Peter Donegan won the Texas Song of the Year and International Artist. That's me on that. And then you see like we talked about back in the day, the Albert Lee stuff. The Albert Lee stuff, that one album will have my name on it, but the other stuff, it just says 9-volt. Yeah, so it's I don't know, it's something narcissistic that I don't like about putting my name above the door. I've got a big thing about that. So if you Google Philip Mann, you won't find much. I try and hide. Quite basically, I just want people to leave me alone. If you just give me a gig, I play my bass in my room, come out on stage, do the gig, and then go back. I'm sound as a pound. I live a very quiet little life in my little cottage with my wife. So yeah, it's all good. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, and hope you enjoyed the insights.